All right, here we go. Another fantastic WDC live stream. Thank you for joining us again today. Hopefully we got a good representation of people here. Anyone else from the West Coast with me joining for a little lunchtime session? Or anyone over from the East Coast from our home location of Massachusetts? As always, tech issues. I can't see the live stream, so I don't know what comments are coming in, but hopefully you guys are there and it's working and you're submitting comments. Facebook seems to always update itself or change at weird times, so I don't know what's happening right now, but cool. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about whale moms today and how awesome they are and kind of what we see in different species and in different populations. For everyone that's been tuning in regularly, my name is Colleen. I'm the Jessica Rekos Fellow for Orca Conservation with WDC. I am based out on the West Coast in Oregon, so you're seeing a different background today. This is different from our headquarters in Massachusetts and the folks that you usually see. So changing it up a little bit, getting our work from home backgrounds in. And since my role at WDC focuses on orcas, I'm gonna apologize in advance. Fair warning, most of this talk and this live stream is focused on orcas. Not really a bad thing, but just to let everybody know. A couple of reasons for that. One, because that's personally where I have the most knowledge and experience and where my brain goes when I think about matriarchs and whale moms and how awesome they are. And because orcas are probably the most extreme example of matriarchal-based societies and really important moms and elder females in whale and dolphin populations. They have this really unique social structure that really centers around moms and elder females. So they're just such an incredible example to talk about when we talk about moms and celebrating whaley good moms. And for orcas, the culture of these specific populations and the survival of individuals and families is really tied to the female leaders in their communities, because we have these amazing records of data going back decades from organizations like the Center for Whale Research and our partners at Orca Lab in British Columbia. And by having those really long-term data sets, researchers have been able to learn a lot about specific orca communities that we'll be talking about today and how important mothers are in those populations. But of course, we have to first give a shout out and say Happy Mother's Day to every mom and maternal figure out there. And a special shout out to our moms at WDC from our crew. None of us would be here talking on Facebook or doing the jobs that we do or helping to work with WDC without your support and without you being a leader in our family groups. So happy Mother's Day to our moms and happy Mother's Day to all of the moms and maternal types out there. All right, so you might realize if you're a mom yourself or if you were raised by one, that moms do a lot. And that is very true for whale moms as well. Maternal care of brand new calves is very extensive in terms of energy and attention and sometimes time. Calves can stay with their moms for months or years, or even for their entire lives, like in certain populations of orcas. From what we know about whale and dolphin societies, they are generally female-based. And I want to emphasize there's definitely a lot that we still don't know about their lives and social structures. But from what is available, the mother whales are really the ones supporting the survival of their calves, teaching them how to live on their own and making sure that they're well set up to have long and happy lives. Baby whales don't come out ready to go. They need a lot of help, and moms are the ones growing the babies through pregnancy, supporting them through nursing, and making sure the babies get nice and big and healthy, get that big fat blubber layer that helps keep them warm in the ocean, protecting them from predators and threats, and sometimes even taking care of the calves after they stop nursing and are pretty much okay on their own. These moms are also teaching their calves essential survival skills like what to eat, where to find it, any migration routes they need to know, where their community goes in different seasons. So there's a lot to do to take care of a new little calf. And although all mom whales provide that basic care for taking care of their young, like making sure that they're just surviving and sharing that essential information, how they do that, how they transmit that information, and how long that care lasts varies a lot between different species. So if you've been joining us for these live streams and webinars, you're all whale experts by now, and so you might recall from previous talks that there are two main groups of whales who have very different strategies for feeding and traveling and just life in general. We have our toothed whales, the odontocetes, whales with teeth, which includes dolphins, sperm whales, porpoises, narwhals, and belugas, and beaked whales. And our baleen whales are mysticetes, the filter feeders, which are the larger whales that have, includes right whales, gray whales, blues, humpbacks, anything that has that baleen in the mouth and filters water and food and prey. So they also have different strategies for raising their young, and there's major differences within even these different groups of whales between specific species. So toothed whales could be pregnant anywhere from 10 to 17 months. Orcas are pregnant from 16 to 17 months. They're putting a lot of time and energy into growing that baby. They nurse for a longer period of time, up to 3 years for most species, possibly even longer in some. And in general, toothed whales are very social, but that social structure, again, does vary between species. So some might stay in these really family-centered groups until they mature or until for their entire life. And some may have larger groups and kind of mix and match with unrelated individuals, just depending on who's around and what they're up to. But those maternal bonds stay really strong until the calf leaves the mom's side, or even stays really strong if the calf stays with mom into adulthood. Toothed whales don't undertake those epic migrations that we know baleen whales take, so they can have calves at any time. There's really no seasonality to it. And those babies are spending really extensive time periods with mom while they're nursing. So they're learning a lot of new things from their family. They're seeing a lot of activities happen. And so they're figuring out what to eat, special foraging techniques that might be specific to their population or family group, who they should socialize with, who they should avoid. They're learning communication skills like the dialect of their family group, or some species even have those signature whistles that identify specific individuals. They're learning their home range and their habitat and just kind of everything they need to know about being an individual in their particular species and in their particular family group. The baleen whales are usually pregnant for a year or less and nurse for less than a year, but they're also putting a lot of energy into growing those babies a lot in the first months of their life. So baleen whales have those epic migrations that we've talked about that go between those warmer water, winter breeding grounds, and then cold water, summer feeding areas. They do have these seasonal cycles to having calves and raising their young, and they're reliant on what they're able to eat during those key summer foraging times, so they can really bulk up and have a lot of energy and resources available for taking care of that calf, because they don't eat in the wintertime when they're down on those breeding areas. So for a new humpback mom, she's nursing a calf in warm waters and through her return back up north to those feeding areas. And once she returns to the feeding area, keeps nursing and keeps showing that calf, you know, this is our migration route. This is what we eat. This is how we get it. You know, this is our life. This is how we live. And once they wean the calf and separate it, then that calf is pretty much on their own. So they have to learn a lot of information in a pretty short period of time. And because baleen whales don't really stay in those interconnected, really tight social groups, they might have specific preferred friends or individuals that they spend more time with or hang out with. But again, as far as we know from the information we have, they don't have those tightly bonded, really big gregarious social groups like a lot of the toothed whales have. So that calf is learning everything from mom. She is putting all of her resources and energy into making sure that that calf survives and learns all the skills necessary to go on and be a successful and happy and healthy whale. So one great example of that is our favorite Gulf of Maine matriarch, Salt. So she, of course, has been a star of these live streams so far, and her name has definitely come up a lot. And she has a family tree that is so extensive, it barely fits on this page. She's got great grand calves that keep coming back to the Gulf of Maine. And we're able to build this family tree and trace her calves and grandcalves and great grandcalves because her family comes back to the Gulf of Maine to feed each summer. And that's information that Salt probably learned from her mother, and now she's sharing that information 3 generations down the line. So it's just an amazing example of how this information is transferred from mom to offspring and is just carried on over time. And there's also pretty big differences, as mentioned, between toothed whales and baleen whales and how often they're giving birth. You can probably guess that no matter which strategy they're using, they're putting a lot of time and energy and resources into growing those calves and making sure they survive. And it does take time to kind of rest up and replenish those reserves between calves. So most baleen whales have calves every 2 to 3 years. Most toothed whales go a little bit longer because they do have that extended nursing time where they're really taking care of a new baby. But of course, there are exceptions to every rule, and there's still so much that we don't know about whales and dolphins. Some species might have babies every year. So harbor porpoises here on the right, and minke whales in particular, might have calves every year. And there are some individual humpbacks, whoops, shouldn't scroll, like Scylla, who has had calves in back-to-back years, which is pretty unusual for a humpback because they do want to take that time to rebuild their energy reserves and kind of rest and recover after putting all that effort into having one calf. So that's all just pretty general information about the differences between toothed whale and baleen whale moms. And again, as I just said, there are exceptions to every rule, and there's some species that have really unique social structures. And 2 in particular that really social or really center around moms are sperm whales and orcas. So sperm whale social structure has females as the core of their social units. And these groups of older females and their offspring will travel together. Male calves will leave once they hit maturity and they kind of go off on their own, but female calves will stay as part of these core groups. And the groups are mostly related to each other, so it's kind of these extended family units, but not always. And like in orcas, these group sizes and how they're related can be different between different communities and different populations. So generally they live in these really big mother and family oriented groups, but not always. Orcas, however, are possibly the most extreme example of whale and dolphin moms being the very center and core of their communities. And moms put a lot of effort into ensuring the survival of their offspring and their families. So just to give you all a brief refresher, remember that orcas are still considered one species worldwide, but these different ecotypes exist that have their own behaviors, their favorite foods, unique dialects, and unique social structures. We're going to be focusing in today on resident orcas, since they are the best example of a matriarchal society, and in my personal opinion, the most amazing moms in whale and dolphins. The matriarchs and elder females are likely very important in other types of orcas as well. That seems to be kind of the theme throughout whale and dolphin cultures, but there's just not enough information available yet to know how other orca ecotypes interact in their social structures and how important the mothers are in those groups. For an example, like in the bigs, the mammal-eating orcas, the elder females are probably also really important. The young will stay with mom for a while she teaches them those important survival skills like learning how to forage and hunt for food. But they do leave mom, so they don't stay with her for their whole life like they do in resident orcas. So for a reminder for these resident orcas, remember that they are fish eaters, so they're relying on a relatively stable food source. And they live in these larger groups that stay in one area for long periods of time, which led to them being called resident orcas. And this has led to those really tight social bonds in their communities with both male and female calves staying with mom for her life. So these pods or extended family units often travel together and stay together, at least in communication distance with each other. And their families are defined by their matrilines. So the female that they're all descended from, we refer to them by the senior-most female in the family. And their communities are led by matriarchs, the elder females who are at the head of the family group and kind of call all the shots for their family group. And they really are the leaders in what their family is doing at any particular time. And resident orcas in particular, and I will emphasize this is the resident ecotype here because it's something that's still unconfirmed for other types of orcas like the bigs or orcas in other oceans, are one of just 5 species of mammal that go through menopause and have those extended post-reproductive lifespans. So they stop giving birth at some point in their life, but they still live an extended period of time after that. So we have 4 species on the screen here. We have our resident orcas, belugas, narwhals, and short-fin pilot whales. And there's one more mammal species that joins this group in going through menopause. And I wish I could see the comments because this is where I was going to ask everyone for what their guess was in their question, but I can't see them for some reason. So I'm going to have to assume everyone is getting the right answer. And then everyone is saying people. So humans. Humans are that 5th mammal species that go through menopause. And the theory behind that, why species like human beings and resident orcas have those really long post-reproductive lifespans, comes from studying human societies and an idea called the grandmother hypothesis. We like to feature this beautiful picture of our coworker Michelle's niece and grandmother here because it's just such a great picture of the generational aspect of the grandmother hypothesis. So for the most part in the animal kingdom, your goal is to survive and to make sure that your genes survive. So you want to reproduce and have offspring who keep your lineage going. And animals will have different strategies to make sure that this happens. Some, like rabbits and mice, will have lots and lots of babies, just kind of betting on the odds that at least a few of them are going to survive. And then some, like whales and people, have a few babies, but put a lot of time and effort into making sure that they're healthy and can survive and live good long lives. So generally, animals will keep having babies until they die to maximize that chance of their genes being carried on to future generations. But for humans and for those 4 species of marine mammal, females stop having babies at some point in their life. And so this grandmother hypothesis suggests that at some point, it's more beneficial for the females to stop putting time and energy into having babies of their own and instead focus on helping their grand offspring and extended families survive. And this still supports that, genetic heritage and genes surviving and being passed down, but seems to be more efficient and safer for these older females. And so that shift in focus has huge, broader implications for the larger community and overall fitness. But that's really where it came from, is these elder females being really important to the survival of their entire community. So for orcas, these elder whales, these grandmother whales, have become even more important to their families and their survival as they get older. and have a lot of what's called ecological knowledge or information about their environment and the important elements of it. Food, safety, good areas, where to go at certain times. So for resident orca matriarchs, and remember that one of the big threats facing resident populations of orcas is not having enough food, salmon specifically, to support their communities. These matriarchs know when and where to go to find salmon, when salmon are coming back to specific areas and rivers at certain times, and maybe even know or remember different places to go look if food in one specific area isn't great. And that information, that ecological knowledge, is passed down through the family, like a family recipe for salmon, or a family vacation home. Go up to the Salish Sea around the Salmon Islands in the summer and then head back down to California in the winter. It's shared through these generations. And again, because we have the benefit of years and years of observing these orcas and watching them and seeing what they do over time, and that long-term monitoring by groups like Center for Whale Research and Orca Lab, scientists have been able to study and learn about how important these orca moms are to the survival of their families. So I want to walk through some examples of this really cool research and really interesting things that have been learned. So as noted, these elder females are really the leaders of their families and their pods, and they have that knowledge about their local environment and the resources around them, and they're sharing that with their offspring, with their kiddos. And this is another concept that has been studied in humans and found to also exist in other intelligent and cultural species. And these elder females are also the ones in the lead when they're foraging. So they're directing their families and showing everybody where to go to find food and how to get it, especially in years when salmon is low. So again, they have that knowledge and maybe they know to go check in certain places if they're having trouble finding food to try to get, a better chance somewhere else. And that information is passed down so the next generation of matriarchs can become leaders and can help support the survival of their family groups and ensure that the population survives and is around for a long time. And in resident orcas, the females also help give their sons a little extra boost of survival. They're more likely to lead their sons and to share food with them. And the males are really dependent on their moms for help in socialization and being connected to the bigger social groups. So just like if you have that one friend who's always the one to plan parties or get-togethers, some family groups or individuals might be, the ones to be more social and helping to support kind of the general survival and happiness of their family groups. So any ideas, again, I'm sorry, I can't see the comments, but if anyone has ideas why moms might be more likely to support their sons, put them in the comments. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to think about it. But remember that males and females both stay with their mom for life. But the males are going to go outside of the pod to have their own babies. So elder females are likely to help boost their son's survival because their son is then gonna, go have his own calf, but that calf is going to be cared for by another family. So the burden of raising that offspring and taking care of them goes to somebody else, but the genes are still passed along. So helping the males survive and reproduce is more beneficial for a specific family group. So orcas might be a little bit of a mama's boys, but it really does come down to the survival and support of the whole family and the dependence on those matriarchs to help them survive. So this is a great picture. This is one of the southern resident matriarchs sharing a salmon with her calf. So again, she is sharing food. She's helping to pass on key survival skills while also helping that calf survive and thrive and make it long enough to learn all of those key ways of how to survive. And studies have shown that having grandmothers around can even increase the survival of grand offspring. So they're helping, again, to take care of that entire family group, making sure that everybody survives and making sure that those social connections and social networks are strong and maintained, and helping the survival of the entire family group. And that key information on survival is passed down. And of course, we wouldn't know all of this without the hard work of the many scientists working on these studies and compiling all this information. So I want to acknowledge those studies and that hard work. And if you're curious about learning more, please check them out, do a deep dive. You can learn everything there is to know about orca matriarchs and how important these elder females and grandmothers are. So these elder females, these orca moms and matriarchs, are helping to keep their pods and their families together and help keep them alive. Their social connections and family ties are especially important when resources are scarce, like in years of really low salmon abundance. And the loss of a matriarch or an elder female can cause big changes in social dynamics, just like it can in human societies. That wisdom of the elders, that ecological knowledge that these moms, these orca moms have and pass down to their new calves and their extended offspring and families is what makes them really, really important and what makes these matriarchs just so amazing and incredible and fantastic leaders of their family groups. So to sum up, orcas and all whales and dolphins need their moms just as much as we do. And all whales and dolphins are amazing and dedicated and hardworking moms trying to make sure their babies make it in the world, just like all human moms, grandmoms, and maternal figures. So again, happy Mother's Day to all of those figures out there. Thanks for joining another WDC live stream. I'm gonna try to look at the comments. I don't know what happened to them, but I can't see them. So if you have questions, let us know in the comments and we will get back to you and answer them. We're keeping these live streams going. So if there's any specific questions or topics that you want to see us dive into and do a deeper look at, let us know. You can email us, you can send us a Facebook message. We're happy to take suggestions. These have been a lot of fun and getting to connect with everybody and getting to, kind of compile all of this information, like going through and revisiting all the information about matriarchs and orca moms was really fun and a good way for me to refresh myself on this information. We will post next week's topics and schedule over the weekend, so keep an eye out for that. Add it to your calendars. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I still can't see the video. I don't know what happened to it. So I hope that this is working and that I have not just been sitting here talking to myself for the last half hour. And I'm sorry I can't answer questions live, but I just cannot see the video and I don't know where it is. And I am not that tech savvy to find it. Ooh, maybe I did. Okay, I found the questions. Yay. All right. Alice asked, is it because they have different instinct? Okay, so this was a question to, I think, why the moms give a little extra attention to the males. And so that's a good guess, with different instincts being different between different sexes. And that would probably apply more in other whale and dolphin species where the males are actually leaving mom and going off on their own. But for resident orcas, the males do stay with mom for life. So even though they leave the pod generally to go have offspring of their own, they come back and rejoin their family pod. So for resident orcas, they're not actually leaving. And a question on menopause and resident and transient orca females. So transients are the marine mammal eaters. They have slightly different social structures than residents. They don't stay in those really long-term family groups. And that's one of the questions that researchers are trying to answer by looking at that historic record of observation and what researchers have seen over the last 50 years. So it's an unknown. We do know that it happens in resident orcas, but transients, it still seems to be a question mark. So still working on figuring that out. Okay, I'm gonna check out the other comments and see if we have any other questions I can answer now. And again, if you think of any more, we are happy to revisit and check on them later and answer you guys in the comments. All right, I am not seeing any other questions. So good ones though. Thank you for asking those. It really is fascinating. Like I said at the beginning, there's a lot that we do know, but there's still so much that's unknown, and we're learning more all the time. And a lot of that information on orca matriarchs has really been within the last 10 years. So it's still relatively new information. And they just recently, I think about a year ago, added belugas and narwhals to that list of species that go through menopause. So that's a pretty recent thing that scientists figured out, and were able to confirm that for them too. Oh, and Alice asks, how can we help the resident orcas more in regards to the salmon problem? So as mentioned on this live stream and on the one I did a few weeks ago on southern resident orcas, not having enough food available is definitely one of the biggest problems the southern residents face. We are working on a number of different ways to help rebuild salmon populations and provide a long-term food source as well as an immediate food source. So we just wrapped up a comment period on Snake River Dam removal, which will help restore Chinook salmon coming out of the Columbia River Basin. So stay tuned for next steps for that. We will also have some opportunities to take action and engagement during June, which is Orca Month. We have moved to Orca Month online now, but we're still going to be providing you guys with a lot of really fun information and activities and ways to get involved for orcas. For salmon, it really comes down to restoring salmon habitat, making sure there's enough funding and resources and effort available to do that, restoring access in rivers that are blocked, and reducing contaminants that can actually kill off juvenile and adult salmon. So it's kind of just a rough overview. We'll link you some more stuff in the comments, Alice, and thanks for asking, because that's an important issue. Okay, I'm going to wrap up, guys. Let everyone on the West Coast get to their lunch, and let everyone on the East Coast start wrapping up their day. But thanks again for joining us. If you have questions, put them in the comments, and we will see you next week. All right, thanks, everybody.